I believe that historically, the relationship between Indigenous people and museums has been a bad one.
They're starting to realize that there are multiple voices.
Iwini, my name is Cory Ridgeway. I am Nanacoke from Millsboro, Delaware, and I now reside in New Jersey with the Nanacoke Lenape people.
Kwinganawalomwa, Nidi Shinzi Achkok Paposi, Domi Minzi Tekwach, Ni Nonjai El Napawi Lakawit, Niha Del Napawi. My English name is Brent Stonefish. I'm Turtle Clan from El Napawi Lakawit, which is also known as Delaware Nation, Raven of the Thames, and I am Linapao.
Museums got their artifacts in 3 different ways. Either they traded or were gifted it by Native people. They had gotten it from collectors, which we have no idea how those collections came across, and grave robbers. It was a very big deal for the last 300 years, having our remains dug up and being able to sell them to museums and to sell them to collectors.
Well, I think that narrative starts with our history of dispossession and our diaspora, as people call it now. But when we were forcibly removed from our nations, we are of the earth. Our stories tell us we are of the earth. We are made of the earth. And so when we're born, we're made from the same materials that the earth is made of. And so when we die and our spirit leaves, we put those remains back in the earth. You go back to the earth. If there is a desecration of our remains that we put back into the earth, the belief is that it ties that spirit to the earth, because there has been a disturbance of those remains. And so the spirit can get caught here or can be pulled back here to this earthly plane. And so in order to allow them to rest peacefully, that's why it's so important that we bring those remains back to the earth and put them back to the earth. However, which tribe you're working with, however they see fit for that. And the problem is with some of the sacred items that are in the coffers of the museums is that they've been taken from those people as well. They go. That's why the grave robbing happened, is because we would put their pipes with them if they had a pipe, or we would put sacred objects that they had with them when we buried them. And so many people were robbing the graves to get those items. From my understanding is those sacred objects, they were put in the ground for a reason. They weren't meant to be used again. So that's why they need, from my perspective and from my understanding, that's why they need to go back into the earth as well.
Today, that legacy is still there. So when you work with museums, they really have taken the humanity out of dealing with Native artifacts. So when we say something's sacred to us, we think that they should be held in a different way. We have an emotional connection to them, and the emotional connection is not in the institution that are museums. They are taught that this is something we should talk about. We have a display, it looks beautiful, and that's our way of educating. But that's not the way that we educate. That's not the way that we were taught. When I think about my history with museum work, I started off at our tribal museum, and that's where I really learned to love museum work, and I loved history and the stories of our people and the stories of people from everywhere. So it was always a very joyful thing for me. I got to work with a lady named Odette Wright, and she was fantastic. She knew everything that was in there. She had a library, and she read everything. And when I worked there, that was the first thing I did. I just sat down, and I would spend all summer reading and giving tours and explaining who we were and how we've always been there. And I remember having a conversation with my grandfather after I read a certain book about our people. And it was about how that person stole a grave marker from one of our great-great-grandfather's graves. And later on in my life, I had the opportunity to go to the Smithsonian, be able to go to the archives, so it wasn't out. And that grave marker is still there. They still have it, and that is my direct line. All of our relatives need to come back. Those sacred objects need to come back because they need to be taken care of in a certain way that they have not been taken care of. They need to be laid to rest. And when I think about my personal connection, the good and the bad, because I've had a lot of good experiences with museums, but I've also had some horrible experiences as well. So if we can figure out a way to come together and make those better for a lot of our people, because I know I'm not the only one. I know there's people from every single tribe across the United States and Canada who feel the way I feel and have had a similar experience.
For us, it's a matter of where do we go from here? You know, I think our nation in particular, the Alnapawi is we really haven't delved into that too much. And so it's where do we go from here? How are we going to take care of these things? And so there needs to be dialogue on our end for ourselves and a dialogue with the museums to be able to do that.
We really don't know everything that they have, but they have a clear list of everything to be able to reach out to those people, to be able to reach out to Lenape, be able to reach out to the Nanticoke and all the other tribal people and say, hey, this is what we have. And we really would like you to take a look at it because we could be able to teach them. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to take everything back. And I think that's one of the fear that a lot of museums have. They're scared that we're just going to ask for everything back and then they'll have nothing to show. But that's not the case. We would like to take back our sacred objects. We would like to take back remains, but we would also like to be able to explain what they have from our point of view, because so many times our voices have not been heard. We have the history. We can tell you about these things. We can explain everything about them, not from an anthropology way where you trickle down. So, oh, well, this is a X, and I think that this means this. And, oh, yeah, because of this, it's going to be that. We have the stories. We know the history. We can tell you the correct thing. But it can be an open conversation, and it can be a collaboration. And we are very much willing to work with museums who are willing to work with us.
National museums, they have a whole process and policy that they have to follow. And I don't think that policy necessarily has Indigenous nations in mind. They're following their policies. Again, they are in control of the narrative. And even though that they've had Indigenous consultants and have Indigenous people working, they don't represent the hundreds of national beliefs of Indigenous people across North America. So again, communication is key. Depending on what type of relationship they create with the nations they're dealing with is how open it can become.
I think one of the first steps that museums can do is to really pull those items out of the public view. If you really want to respect us, give us the time to look over everything. And even if you need to put a black sheet over something that it's like, this might be sacred, put a black sheet over it and put a card at the bottom and explain that this is a sacred object and it doesn't need to be seen at this time. It can really be as simple as that. That's why I'm really happy to be working with the Museum of Amsterdam, because they're really the first museum outside of our area who really have been trying to make it right and are trying to do better and to pave that way. And that's just a wonderful thing to see.
What we're going to be doing at the Amsterdam Museum when we get there is we're going to go in and we're going to smudge the space. The whole idea behind that is because we're going into a place where some of our ancestors that were in Manhattanang or Lenape-Aking were taken from their homelands, and they were sold as slaves across the world. And some ended up in the Netherlands. And so You know, we want to be able to offer tobacco and offer a smudge to cleanse the place, but also acknowledge those spirits that you know, those people that were there. There are many different medicines that we have that we use from the earth. And each medicine is used for a certain thing. Tobacco we use, the reason we use tobacco is that it's what we pray with. It's that, if you could say, I don't want to say payment, but it's that gift that we give creation when we ask for something. It's that gift that we give back to our Creator, Kishalimokwang, the one who thought us into existence. It's that gift showing our intentions of what we are asking for. And so when we do that, when we offer that, we pray with it. We usually put it in our left hand, because it's that connection to the heart. And we pray with it. And once we're done with it, we usually either burn it, or we put it on the earth, or we put it in the water, or we put it by a tree, or we put it on a rock. But we connect it to the earth, or we send those prayers up through burning it. And so that's one of the things that we offer those spirits that are going to be in that space. And those ancestors that you're going to bring with you when you come into that space. And then by smudging, usually we smudge either with sage, sweetgrass, and cedar. And so those three, and sometimes we use a combination of the three, sometimes we might use one, depending on what we need it for. But the whole idea behind that is to cleanse the space. To cleanse the space so that there is no negativity. To cleanse the space of any hurt feelings. To cleanse the space of any dark thoughts. You know, so that's the whole reason behind doing that, is to create a spiritually cleansed space. And it affects your mind and it affects your body. So you have all those things taken care of when you do a smudge.